Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 255. We've got a returning guest, and we'll get to him in a little bit. It's been a while since he's been on, but I wanted to catch up with Tim, who's our guest. But first of all, we're going to do what we usually do and just kind of go around and tell everyone who we are, where you can find us, and anything we got to promote. So you're on my channel, so if you just happen to find this, or maybe you're a fan of Tim's and you're discovering this for the first time, I'm Scott with Circworks Art Labs. This is my YouTube channel, and you can also find, if you're a comic book creator, I have a video series called Making Comics 101, which takes you every step of the comic making process, from coming up with your idea all the way to finishing the comic, printing it, getting it out there, and all the steps in between. So definitely check that out. And I don't know if I had anything really else to promote other than I will's coming up, because it's gonna be Black Friday and everything, and I'll have some sales and things going, I'm sure. But other than that, yeah, that's all I got to talk about as far as stuff I'm promoting. What about you, Josh?
Nice. So I am actively promoting Two Stories, which is my graphic novel that is finally published, and it comes out, the release date is December 14th, but you can pre-order it now on Amazon. So I'd really encourage people who like, graphic novels that go a little beyond like the superhero comic. It's a slice of life story that deals pretty heavily with issues grappling with faith and mental illness, and it's hand lettered and hand inked, and it's a labor that took quite a few years to kind of execute. Let me see if I can get some pages kind of previewed in there. So but yeah, so like this thing is out for pre-order, and indie comics kind of ride or die based on like pre-orders and support from like, outside the mainstream. And so yeah, so you can also, on my channel, on my YouTube channel, you can check out a trailer for that. You can also check it out at quarterlystories.com. It's just a little trailer that gives you a taste of what the comic's like. And yeah, that's pretty much what I have to promote, and we'll probably be promoting heavily for like the next few months. So
yeah, I didn't know you got a trailer. Is that a new trailer that you just uploaded, or?
Yeah, I think I uploaded it like at like 2 in the morning.
Okay, well, I gotta check that out.
Yeah, and I'm pretty stoked. So far, I think people dig it. So we'll see. I didn't end up showing any footage of like the live drawing, because I thought I had a lot more archived than I did. And so like pulling through my old YouTube footage, I realized like I'd have to pull all the like menu bars and stuff off of it. And I was like, I right now I'm like editing press release copy and stuff, because I'm making like a special section on my website for media, because I haven't done a media push yet. And so like that's kind of, I need my guns for that. So I needed a trailer done. So I don't know, but I was pretty happy with the result. Anyhow, that was rambly and occupying way too much time. So yeah.
All right, so let's get to our guest, Tim Phillips. He's returning. Last time, I mean, it's been a few episodes since we had you on, and the topic that time was not safe for content, and we're going to revisit that. But we're also going to talk a little bit about either censorship or some of the problems dealing with different platforms, because I'm encountering some of that. I don't do exactly what Tim's doing, but I have some stuff that's not for the masses or not for everyone, a little more adult stuff that I have come across a few obstacles that I try to navigate. So I figured it'd be just fun to get Tim's input on that, and just whatever else he wants to talk about. So Tim, first of all, where can they find you?
The best place to find me is at Deviant. It's just Tim Phillips at Deviant Tim Phillips. Patreon is my other main site. It's Tim Phillips it's Tim Phillips Not Safe for Work at the NSFW at Patreon. And then I also started on Newgrounds, which is a new one for me. I don't think it's that new. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's been around for a while,
but I'm trying that out to see, just so I have another place to run and hide if one of the other ones kicks me off. So
yeah, I don't have that link on the screen, but it is in the description of this video, and you can click those. All three of Tim's links are in the description. If you just click on that, you can find Tim.
Yeah.
And just be warned, as you'll know when we get into the topic, that his stuff is definitely more adult. So if that's what you're into, then definitely check it out, and you might even want to check out Tim's Patreon and definitely definitely join that and everything. So Tim, what have you been up to?
A lot of work. I'm staying pretty busy. I'm trying to crank out just as much possible content as I can. That and manage an 8-year-old son too.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of Fortnite being played, but outside just cranking out as much stuff as I can for my Patreon. I've been doing a lot of. I started in May doing comic strips.
Okay, cool.
Just a simple, because they work well on the screen. They work well on the tablet. It's your typical 3 square panel strip. And I started out doing one for my $5 tier people, and then one for my $10 tier people. So obviously the $10 you get both of them. And it would be like a continuation across 2 strips. I always would have loved to do like a daily, like Liberty Meadows, or even some of the old stuff like Flash Gordon. I mean, I would love to have done that. But obviously, this would be, wouldn't be the New Yorker, it'd be Hustler,
Right.
It would be, a strip like that. I could tell a 3-part gag. I could set something up with an establishment, get some main action, then have some aftermath. Just follow that boom, boom, boom. And then take it across, continue it to 2 strips. So I try to do 2 of those a week. So I get 8 of them total. I also decided I need to start not giving stuff away, but I need to start having stuff that's not everything being under a paywall. I think was annoying a lot of people. There's everything I got. There's Patreon stickers everywhere, all over everything. They're like, hey, do you have anything that's not censored? And I thought to myself, okay, well, I can't do the stuff that's in the strips because I have to censor it, on Deviant or something like that. I don't have on Newgrounds. Sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want there. But on Patreon or on Deviant specifically, I have to have it censored. So I think, well, what can I do nudity is fine, So usually it's not very hardcore. It's pretty tame. So I do then I figured, I'm just going to do a pinup, right? Maybe just like, sexy girl pinup of the character that would be in the strip. But then I thought to myself, how about do it like a promo, like a promo poster, so it advertises the strip, the set. And so, and it would have it's almost like a cover of a comic, you'd have the cover and then it's the same, setup that's going to be in the strip, just kind of like a cover to a comic book. And I could put some advertisement on it. And the other thing is I realized that not a lot of people read the comments when you post something every time. Mm-hmm. So they might not know it's on Patreon. So now, boom, I just slap a big sticker on there. If you want this strip, go to Patreon. And so the wording is in the image. So because they're going to go look at the image first, well, they're still going to have to read some of the text. Oh, this is a 2-part comic strip starring blah blah blah, featuring blah blah blah. And then it's on Patreon. So if I want to see this, I can get the uncensored version. And then you also get with that uncensored, you don't just get access to the uncensored version. I also separate the pencils, the inks, the colors, separations, the lettering, which I call it photostat because I want to be cool like Marvel Comics and have the photos.
Yeah, I haven't heard that since back when I was in probably college. When
I'll get into it. I love black and white, right?
I think we're all three, I think Josh and I both do black and white comics, so yeah.
So I know that people want the color. But the thing is, there's some people like me that want to see just the inks or just the pencils.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I include it all, and so they can get every single one. They can just go through, and I even encourage people. I said, hey, if you want to ink, you want to test out your inking, hey, take my pencils and try giving a shot of inking. Send it to me and say what it looks like, or hey, try coloring this, and just. For fun or whatever, because some people say, "Oh, I'd love to ink your stuff." It's like, well, okay, here's some pencils. Go at it. Let me see.
Yeah, Yeah, I always feel that way about flatting. Like I want to meet somebody who's ambitious and loves flatting because I hate it. And
for $10 a page, you can get it done in the Philippines.
That's true. That's true. They pick weird colors, but it's pretty easy as long as they didn't. Yeah, as long as they didn't like the main issue, and this is just for anybody who might like, because we have a lot of like aspiring cartoonists and cartoonists, practicing cartoonists who listen to our show and stuff. Like if you're going to outsource flats, especially if it's not vector, and which like the majority of us who do traditional stuff, it's not, right? You want to make sure they're aliasing that edge, because if they have like they're anti-aliasing that edge, because if they have like wait a minute, no, aliasing, that is the right thing, because if the edge is aliased, which is like that blurry thing, then it looks okay on the screen, but when you're trying to make your selection to do your rendering, it's going to be a nightmare, and that usually is a huge issue with outsourcing. So like make sure they have the right settings so that when you zoom in, it's like that step ladder edge where it's pixeled. But anyhow, super nerdy. Sorry.
No, I do it myself too sometimes. Is I don't use the lasso tool to flat.
Yeah.
I just use the color, right, with like a round brush.
Mm-hmm.
Just follow the contour of the line, and then I just bucket paint it, right? But I usually nervously click like 2 or 3 times in the bucket, because I hate when I go to select it to do shading and there's this weird little line that I've missed in there.
Yeah,
like, oh, come on! It's like again with that.
The workaround with that, as annoying as it is use like, especially if you're. I mean, first off, stop doing that. Like, because I know so many people who like filling the flats because it feels like painting. But
it feels like painting, yeah, or coloring
hours, man. But the other thing is, you like if you do want to paint it in, whatever you're painting, make sure you're doing it with like the pencil tool. As like ghetto and lame as that is, like that's literally it'll give you the step ladder edge that you need.
Okay.
And when you print it, it'll be like crisp and beautiful. And like I said, when you're, anybody who's done comic book coloring, it's just like getting to that edge that's blurry is just like a nightmare. And then you end up with these like halos on final art, like between your line, which is like the last thing you want is like your black line, and then you have this like halo. Anyhow, that's super nerdy and off topic. Sorry. But I do love talking about that kind of stuff. It's like, I remember the guy who taught me how to do digital coloring worked at Bongo for like 10 years. And well, not 10 years, I think 5 years, but he had worked at Bongo like in-house, like next to like Mark Hamill's kid. And like, I guess the art director at Bongo used to have like one of those little, those little
loop
viewer like eyeglass things.
It's like a loop, right?
Like a little loop. And he put the loop like on the printouts, like, because they'd have to print out everything, and he put the loop and be like, your trapping's off.
Yeah.
Like, and so like, but that guy taught me all sorts of tricks, like Mignola's colorist, who I'm now blanking out on the name of. He's like one of the best colorists out there. But he has this trick where he breaks down CMYK percentages by like tens. But that like aliasing thing has saved my life, like when it came to print, because it's like it always comes out crisp as long as I make sure I just don't have that blur,
Yeah.
Rambling. Okay. Back to not safe for work. I do want to say, the censorship topic, and this just for people who may not be like doing like super adult themed stuff, but like I do want to show too. It's like it's not unique to right. Like if you buy my book, it's got a mature reader thing. Like if I were at a comic convention, right, and I'm selling this, and like a 5-year-old came up, I wouldn't want them to buy this.
Yeah.
Like and that's mainly due to themes that it deals with. This doesn't have like, but what I'm getting at is I think this topic's going to be really interesting because it has a broad reach. Across like literary areas, as well as like areas that are literature too, or like areas that might push those boundaries. but the point being, like, it should be a concern for like most artists. And I think navigating that, especially in this world where like I've had friends who posted Facebook pictures where they took like a photo like at an art museum, of like a painting of a nude, and it got pulled off their Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a strange thing going on with that, whereas you can show like a photo of somebody getting their brains blown out and it's like no problem. But this, like, this one thing, like, is a little overly litigious and crazy. So navigating that, I think, is really fascinating and I think applicable. I just wanted to chime in, like, just to say, I think it's applicable to people outside of just like niche fields, like dealing with that too, because it's like it literally is going to be one of the issues of our day, I think.
Yeah.
How do you get so I like the so you're doing trailers, and I think that's cool that you're doing sequential work. Like, so how are you navigating like what happens to those trailers? Like, do they get pulled down? It's
no, I mean they stay up. I mean, those I put, it's mature, it's got nudity in it. I usually say most of it is mild, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like, it's not crazy. I mean, it gets crazy in the strip, but the image for the thing is usually pretty, standard, right? You've got like other characters. You usually got the main character, the girl who's, doing whatever. And so people get to see that. And people who, that obviously view the mature stuff that have that turned off, they can get that. And that stays up. And I dump that into a folder of just those, so people can browse just those, and I put the strips here. But usually in the featured, I leave them just in order as I do it. So they see like they see the promo, I call it the promo, see the promo, strip 1, strip 2, next promo, strip 1, strip 2. So they know it. I mean, obviously, that's that character, and I mentioned it. Sometimes I was putting the titles of the strips in, and I realized I got too wordy, so I started taking that out and just putting, starring or featuring this character, and that's pretty much it. I mean, some of it's self-explanatory. It's all fan art.
Yeah.
And most of it's all Marvel. I kind of been getting away from DC. I really don't like DC. I've never really been a huge DC. I've always been a Marvel person. But there's characters, like
I was going to say, how could you do Not Safe for Work without doing Harley Quinn? I mean, that's got to be you probably got more requests for that character than anyone.
The problem is thinking about not Safe for Work. Yeah, I'm like trying to think like people's kind of favorite characters, and I'm like instantly like Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn, like they're all DC characters. So what Marvel characters are kind of trending on that? Like
my most popular is probably She-Hulk, and that's my favorite Marvel character.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I really like Rogue. As you can see, she's back up on the wall back there. But the problem is, it's so weird. Rogue's been drawn by so many different people. Like She-Hulk, you're like John Byrne, right?
Yeah.
Or John Buscema did him in issue 1, and then Jim Mooney took over, right? So you pretty much Savage She-Hulk with those old guys, and then you've got John Byrne. And even in Fantastic Four or her own Sensational, right? It's always one artist. So like it's very recognizable when you see it.
Yeah.
Rogue, started out with, I think Walt Simonson did that first issue appearance of her in where she joins the X-Men. So he was just a fill-in at that time. And then of course John Romita, he'd have her in a different costume every issue, right? For like the longest time, the 80s. And then, and then Paul Smith didn't do her. Well, you think he did her in a couple of issues, but not in his run. And then when Silvestri took over, he did her completely different. And Arthur Adams did her completely different. Yeah. So it's almost like I can never get her right. She's one of my favorite characters, but it's like, if I try to draw like Arthur Adams, right, it looks okay. Back in the day, that was, back when I was in high school, everybody, it's like, who can draw like Arthur Adams? We all copy and draw Arthur Adams style. I always liked Mark Silvestri. I thought he'd made her a little older, a little more sexy, mature. She had like a different costume. Always liked that costume. And then who else? And then then obviously everybody's really familiar with Jim Lee, the Jim Lee X-Men because of the cartoon and everything.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely like a very like I think that might be one of those generation things, because it's like I'm pretty close to Scott in generation, but that would be like one of the differences where when I discovered X-Men, it was all Jim Lee,
Yep.
at that point, where it was like, oh, it's like this crazy hatched artwork. But what's interesting, you're right about her, because the one kind of trait that sort of stays is like the color of her hair.
Oh yeah.
That's basically it. Like
because the haircut can change.
Current films and stuff. It's like it's like kind of joined her character with Jubilee. So it's like there's really no consistent. Her costume doesn't really stay consistent. Yeah.
No, I mean, John Romita drew in a different costume every other issue, and I've got a love-hate relationship with Romita Jr. I mean, that's the guy who
I do too, because he did the run when I first got it. Like the first comic I got into was Spider-Man, right?
Yep.
And it was Romita Jr. on that, and it's like a love-hate thing, because he both did some really cool stuff with Spider-Man and then some really weird, like crazy stuff.
Well, I mean, it depends on who's inking him too. If his dad inks him, it looks amazing, but it looks more like Senior, because Senior's like, I'm just going to fix all this, and make it a little better. Like the face, like I don't like his face. I never liked his faces.
Yeah.
And of course, Senior's amazing faces, right? So when he inks his stuff, he usually makes it look. There's an issue. A classic issue. I actually have a strip that I parody on that of when Mystique kills all the X-Men, but then you find out it's Arcade's robots. I can't remember the issue. It's in the late hundreds, almost to 200. And Romita Senior inks that book, and it looks amazing like that, because his inks are just amazing. And I'm like going, oh, like that's his son doing the pencils? I'm like, that's weird. Because then boom, he goes to another inker, and then it's Romita Jr. blocky faces, and it's just there's a panel with Rachel Summers that I cringe every time I see it. Whenever I talk to anybody while I hate him, I show him that panel, like I can't stand his art. But then
too, because similarly, like when I got really into Spider-Man, and then I like went back to like Ditko, I was like, what happened to this comic? Like it was so good, and then But that's also what I get for getting into Web of.
Well, like, for Spider-Man, for me, it's amusing. It's always. I mean, John Romita Sr. is like because he was on all the merchandise back in the late 70s, early 80s. So I always like his Spider-Man. It's also the way he just does Peter Parker too, and of course he does Mary Jane. Amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, he's a awesome artist, because like he's really minimal on his line work on faces, but he just nails it. Like it's really weird, and it's hard to try to mimic. Actually,
speaking of strips, like I had those books that collect all of the John Romita Sr. newspaper dailies back in the 70s. And I was like, I really looked at that because that's what I wanted to do. I want to make these dailies. And I'm just looking at his stuff and just like, and he's only got 3-4 panels to tell the story. And it's just so perfect. Just Jesus, it's like these panels are perfect. It's better than the actual comic itself. And you get them in black and white, the dailies, until the Sunday color. But the dailies, it's all black. I'm like, oh, this is all black and white art here. And it's all reprinted perfectly. And it's like, oh, the inks, everything. It's just, I love that.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Out now, so.
I love that though. Like, I feel this. I feel very intimidated whenever I get into. Like we had a friend of mine on who does like New Yorker strips, and I get super intimidated by limited strips. Like I need a page, or like or 4 pages or a whole graphic novel. But like to condense everything down into like a single strip that's like 3 panels or 1 single panel is like one of the most intimidating things, because you really have to tell a coherent story, and you have no room. I mean, anybody who watches Artcasters knows like I'm a rambly guy, So for me to condense an idea into like a very short sentence is a frightening thing. And I really do think it shows the skill of an artist, like to be able to pull off like the 3-panel, or 1-panel.
Oh, what I learned it's funny because I listened to this interview with, it wasn't with him, but it was about him, John Buscema. And when he did the Conan Daily, he said he hated it because for the exact same reason. I can't tell a Conan story in 3 or 4 panels. And of course, but the nice thing was about his work, and if you look at like Frank Cho's Liberty Meadows, is most strips are just 3 or 4 medium shots. They're always medium shots for the most part. And Buscema was actually, people would get down on him because it's like, you've used too many medium shots. You need more close-ups, you need more long shots. But he would do a lot of medium shots. I love medium shots; they're my favorite. So, but that worked really well. So it's just kind of weird hearing him say, "Oh, I don't like to do that," when the way he would construct his panels was like perfectly conducive to that strip.
Yeah.
So then I always learned, when I was started doing comics, I would always worry about like, it's this panel, somebody's talking to somebody, right? And then, the camera changes, right? The next panel to get a reaction. And everything was like, exactly, you need a whole page because you tell the story, right? And I realized the old guys didn't do that. The old guys had shorthand. It would a panel, and then the next panel be in another building in another city, right?
Yeah.
And then, boom, sometimes they tell on the same page, they go to another scene halfway through the page, not go to the next page to do that. And I noticed, when doing the strips, you're like, when I want a lot of things to happen, but I want to happen quick, right? I can't do this panel and then turn and then, like you're in a room filming.
Yeah.
You gotta go, there's this scene that takes place here, then there's this scene that takes place here, and they could be in the same room or it could be in the same area, but you're telling completely drastic changes from one panel. Yeah. And I learned how to do that doing the strips. I'm like, and I always wanted to do that, but I never could until I made myself, I restricted myself. You got 3 panels to tell the story, and that's it. And there's square panels, so you can't get panoramic. You can't get long panels. There's 3 square panels.
Yeah.
And I just worked with that confine. And now it's like I got like a muscle memory of this is going to go there, this is going to go there, this is going to go there, this is going to go there. And I can fill in all the dead space, to get the composition right. And hopefully it has a nice flow to the 3 panels.
Yeah. I like what you're talking about too, because like a lot of people don't realize that artists are kind of freed by restrictions, weirdly enough. So it's like when the boundaries, it's like I know I'm stuck with 3 panels, so that's what I got to work with. So then you can play, Oh, yeah. But it's like if you don't actually know what the walls are, then it's like it becomes almost it can almost become like crippling or disabling because it's like
too much choice.
Yeah, there's too many options. So it's like a big trick to even starting a comic or being consistent with comics is coming up with your own internal rules for your comics. Like my comic is going to, like for me, like I'm a big fan of Ditko and then Chris Ware. So it's like I don't have a limit to my panels. I'm gonna fill my pages with like, if I need a page with 100 panels and it works for the story, I'll put 100 panels on the page. I don't think I've done that yet, but if I had to, and it would work with the story, I wouldn't be limited in that fashion. But I definitely avoid doing like, big like 4-panel pages, but that's my own internal rule.
Yeah.
It's so important to have those kind of boundaries and like being able to set up your own boundaries and stuff to be able to kind of do those things and do them consistently and get good at them, right? Because if you just put that limit on yourself of like, hey, I'm going to do 3 panels, then you come up with really cool ways to figure out that medium. But if you're just kind of told like, just make it whatever, that can be actually debilitating for artists, I don't know.
So we're talking about limiting. The other thing I'm doing, most of my stuff is Marvel House Bronze Age house style, right? I get a little bit of the Silver Age and throw like the 80s stuff in. It all kind of bleeds together.
Yeah.
But my specialty is that style, that Bronze Age style, because that's when I started drawing comics, was that time, right?
Yeah.
So everything I learned, like if it's from how to draw comics the Marvel way or just copying out of comics, you learning how do you do that shiny Iron Man thing, that weird with the lines and stuff. I learned all that, when I was a, young kid and then into teenager when that stuff was coming out, because that's all there was.
Yeah, they were really big on reflected light. Every form of rendering at that point had like it's like if you shot it on film, you'd have to have like somebody holding like a big white panel like near them to get that. But I have the same thing where it's like those were the guys I kind of looked at and admired, or like I really dug guys who kind of riffed on that style.
Mm-hmm.
And which was pretty popular in like punk rock and like on Santa Cruz skateboard decks, like they kind of borrowed from like silver and bronze. So it's like that look, that kind of the heavy blacks, like I just love it.
Well, the other thing as far as restrictions goes, I've restricted myself to the 68 color Doc Martens original palette, and I won't go out of it. And every time I look at it, it's like I'm just staring at it like, what is this background going to be? It's like, all right, those people did it with 68 colors then. I can do it now, right? They did it. I can do it. And it's just you're staring. It's like, oh, God, I cannot use that magenta. It's totally going to look too bright. Fuck it. I'm using the magenta. All right, there we go. That's fine. Then after you look at it a little while, you're like going, wow, it looks just like the original comic, right?
Yeah.
That magenta made it, or that weird kind of grayish green made it. And it's just, it takes a while. I mean, if I'm looking at a comic, especially if I'm parodying a comic, right, and I want it to take place in that comic, as it's like, here's normal comic, turn the page, here's Tim's crazy comic, and then go back to the regular comic.
I love it.
It is. So I'm looking like, okay, well, that room is that color, that's that color, and that's that color. And then by studying that stuff really closely, because I'm going to emulate it, right, you start picking up, after a while, you're like going, they always use that light lavender, that lilac color. They always use that color. Yeah. And so after a while, you're like, every time you have to go to the colors, it's just like, yep, boom, and use that, boom, 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 done. And then what I do is, I don't want to just do straight flats, right? Because in today's age, everybody's so highly rendered and everything. Yeah. People are like, oh God, it looks too dated. So what I try to do, and of course, with I want the girls to be boom, right in your face too. What I do is I'll only shade like the girl, her skin tone, right? And I'll use a soft airbrush or something like that, or sometimes a hard round brush to do the shading, just like they did. So more like the covers, in the covers, they had more room to use rim lighting and stuff like that. As I wanted the panels to look more like a cover as opposed to interior art. Yeah. So I'll use some of that soft stuff. And then if you look at like reprints where they went back and they recolored the same thing, but with digitally, to put it in like the Masterworks. People always go crazy about, oh, it looks so terrible because it's too bright and it's too garish. It looks great when it was on newsprint, but it's way too overly saturated for the comics. I hate when I hear that because I love that look. I love that oversaturated, super garish, like that magenta that you're like, wow, that is really a hot magenta. It's like right in your face. So I want to use that and being able to, you limit yourself to that palette, right? You get those every single time. Yeah. So every time you look at something, you're like, wow, that looks just like the comic for the most part. And I put my own style into it because people, they'll say like, oh, I can see you in this, right? But if I'm emulating John Byrne, right? I'm doing John Byrne, wrote John Byrne exactly how he does She-Hulk, right? I mean, I'm getting it down to like, oh, he does the nose like this. He does this like this. So people, when they look at it, they're like, yeah, it looks like it literally looks like it came from that John Byrne comic. Or if I'm trying to emulate Buscema or trying to emulate Romita, like I said, I don't like to do Arthur Adams so much because even though I loved him as a kid, he's so heavy. Even the inkers that would ink him, they're so heavily reliant on rapidographs and technical pens. They got away from using the brushes. I love the brushes. John Romita Sr. said to Stan Lee, said, hey, can I just use a number 5 brush? I just want to use a number 5 brush. I don't want to use a pen. I don't want to use a number 3. I just want to use a number 5 brush for the entire comic, right? He says, it's going to look radically different from that last comic. And Stan says, do whatever you want. So then from then on out, he would only ink his own work with a number 5 brush, which is a pretty big brush, 11 by 17. So
I don't think I've ever used more than a 2.
yeah,
Unless I'm filling it like spotting blacks or something.
Yeah, so like I use those Pentel Pocket brush pens, which I think in a brush would be like a 6 or an 8. And then I actually do so like the hatching. I do like this really tiny cross hatching. I'm trying to find like, okay, so like that, all that hatching is brush.
yes, nice.
And so like what I figured out was it's actually quicker and more efficient to do these fine lines of hatching with a really thick brush. If you just get that, like you kind of hold it a little higher up and you get the right movement, and you can hatch way quicker than like a micron. And the thing I hate about micron hatching, right? If you're going to do hatching, is there's no thick and thin.
There's no line weight.
And you can get a little bit of it by like maybe pressing hard and kind of pulling light.
Unless you break them if you break those microns like Vince
I need to learn that trick. The split micron with Vince DePorter is this cartoonist that we've had on multiple times. He's brilliant. He's like this French cartoonist who can work in any style. And I think Scott and I both skills.
Yeah. When I do paper, when I do work on, because I usually work 100% digital now. I do paper. I got the set. I use this Copic set.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's got. Where is it? It's got a number 5. It's got a number 1. It's got a number 3. Where's what I'm looking for? Here we go. Is this puppy here? This.
Yeah.
And this pen, the cartridge lasts for a little while. This pen is as close to, I swear it's as close to a real brush as you can possibly get. And I've used this pen. If you look at the stuff on my walls, I did that with this. The same pen, the same tip. I didn't change the tip. And then you can still how pointed that is.
Yeah.
It's never broken. And I've probably done 100 drawings with this thing.
That's beautiful. I should try the Copics because like I use the Pentel Pocket brush, and one of the problems is I'll just buy like 4 of them, you know. So because they're like $10, you know, and so it's like about like a month in, what happens is the tines split.
Mm-hmm.
Like they split like that, and it's just done. It's torqued. And it's not like you can't condition the hairs to come back. But what's funny is I still to this day think part of why I might do that is I get so intimidated when I'm using like a really nice brush.
Yeah.
Like if I'm using a really nice brush with a, you know, like and doing the traditional, I get intimidated by that brush.
Yeah, I mean it's unruly. I mean it takes a lot of practice to be able to ink with that. I mean, I still can't. I mean, I constantly work on that feathered line, right?
Yeah.
Where you draw like maybe let's say around like a shoulder, right?
Yeah,
right?
feathering's my favorite.
You draw that line you ink that line, right, and go thick to thin. So because the light's going to come up here.
Yeah.
You go thin and then you go dark down to here. Now I want to go through and boom, 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 get those nice feathers to give it some kind of modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like with digital, it's like, God damn it. Undo. God damn it. Undo. God damn it. I cannot get this right.
Yeah, feathering is hard. It's kind of a pain in the ass digitally. Whereas like traditionally it's like you learn that movement to do it. And you know, none of us have it down, you know, to the extent of now I'm blanking out on the guy. Black Hole, Charles Burns. Charles Burns is king of feathering. Like he's the best I think there has ever been at feathering because like the whole style is feathering. But but it's like I just like I have the same thing. Like digitally when I try to feather, it's just like the responsiveness. It might just be tablets. I don't know if that's better on an iPad. Scott, like is that better on an iPad? The feathering.
I don't really do a lot of inking on the iPad. I just do, and I'm curious on what Tim uses. Eventually, you know, I mean, if I would have known, we could have just done this as the topic because this is great stuff. But I don't want to do any false advertising. So eventually, I'll get back. But right now, I'm loving this conversation. But so I'm curious what what software do you use to do your digital inking and everything?
I use Sketchbook Pro.
Okay.
The latest version it's subscription based now. I don't have I have the last of the pre-subscription base, which I think was
nice.
Sketchbook 7.
Now, is that on a desktop or is it on iPad? Because iPad, I don't think it's subscription. I think because I've used Sketchbook and it's free. Or maybe I'm thinking Autodesk Sketch. Is that the one, Autodesk?
Yeah, Autodesk, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I use it on. I got a desktop. I have a desktop setup, so I have right there's the. Where's it? Where are we at here? Right there's my Cintiq.
Okay.
And then that's hooked up as a second screen to my desktop.
Nice.
And then I'm looking at I got a big monitor that I use here. So I got the two screens. I'd like to have that screen over here because I like to use this screen to draw off of, but whatever. But yeah, so I'll use Sketchbook on the Cintiq. I got this. This is an old Cintiq. I think it's the first 12-inch that they made. And it's a beast. I mean, I got it from a friend who gave it to me, who also bought it used. And he bought it like 8 years ago.
Yeah,
about 4 years ago. So and I have, it's funny. Okay, I had a Intuo. What's the one they call the Intuo? Yeah, the one.
Intuos, yeah.
I would go through a tip a week, right?
Really? You must have a heavy hand.
Yeah.
I was telling my friend, because my friend just bought one, and he's like, he wants to know how much do I have to replace these? I said I've been using this thing forever. I've never replaced it.
Well, okay, that's the thing. So my Intuos, right? A tip a week, right? I have that little ring. I used them all, and at one time, I was drawing, and literally the pen just exploded my hand. It was like somebody had like a little squib in it. Like, poof, just blew up my hand. I'm like, what? And I'm like, okay. So then I had to get a new pen. Got a new pen, and then, but my surface of my Intuos was just marred. It looked like it was just destroyed on the surface because I have extremely heavy hands.
You must, because like I said, I think I've replaced the nib like maybe once since
So I do want to show a trick though, and it's not a big trick. It's just something that like I literally had used a Wacom tablet for about 10 years before finding this out.
Okay.
And this literally, I actually found this out as an art director was, okay, so you have your holder.
Yeah.
And then bop.
Yep.
There's all your tip replacements. So if you burn out your tip, like, you don't have to buy a new Wacom. You have a bunch of spare tips. I just wanted to point that out because I was the idiot that had been working digitally for years. And when I finally started working, because I freelanced for like 15 years, and you miss out, like the one biggest downside of freelance is you miss out on that interaction with other artists who have like shortcuts and tips. And like, that's the one thing no one had ever told me.
It's weird
I didn't bother to go to Wacom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's cool. But I will say you must have a heavy hand. I second Scott on this because
that's the thing.
One of these will last me a good year.
I said I'd love to get a Cintiq, but I think I would destroy it, right? And it's a lot of money to destroy something like that, driving the screen. So when I went to my friend's house and I tried it when he got it, I said, it's not that bad. Actually, I like this a lot, right? And he ended up gifting it to me. So here, because he had stopped using it. So I switched to the Cintiq. And the thing was, this is the same tip 4 years ago that's been in the pen since I got it. I've not changed it yet. You can tell it's not even halfway worn down. The screen is buttery smooth. I've drawn a lot of stuff on this with a heavy pen. Especially if you clean it with like an alcohol or something like that.
Yeah.
You can't see one scratch on that screen. That's how this thing's a beast. I mean, if you can take my hand, you're never going to have to worry about the screen. Like I said, that was my biggest fear. It's like, I'm just going to destroy it. But no, it's
that's awesome. That's awesome. I still have my Series 7. Like I do traditional inking, and I have my Series 7 in the tube I bought it in. Because I am that nervous about ever busting that thing open. Because I'm like, I know, like, if I split the tines on that, that's a like $100 mistake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, whereas like on my like Pentel Pocket brush pen, like, oh, got to spend $5 or $10, whatever. Like, I don't know if that's my curve, because like oddly enough, I might save myself a lot of money using the Series 7 and just biting the bullet, but it's like it just freaks me out using expensive tools. On the note of Intuos, before we should get back on net safe for work, but I'm loving this conversation. I had now I'm confusing the two. Which one's the screen? Is that the Cintiq?
That's the Cintiq. Yeah.
Okay. So I have an Intuos. I've worked on an Intuos forever. I'm used to like that. Like I'm working here, I'm looking at a screen here, and or I'm used to like traditionally inking, and so I convinced my work to get a Cintiq, and I've been working on a Cintiq, and after about a month, I just switched it back to screen mode off, just as a regular Wacom.
Really?
I've never heard anyone do that. That's crazy.
For me, it was a pain in the ass, and it slowed me down. And what's weird is like even the screen responsiveness, I didn't like that it like I feel like there's got to be a better, maybe there's a better way of setting it up, but I didn't like that it was kind of like a third screen. So like if I had to work on something, I'd have to drag it over there or save my presets to do that.
Yeah.
Just it became more harm than it was worth. So I might be the weird person who actually like I had the screen, and right now I have that screen, and I literally put it on traditional mode where it's turned off and it's just a regular Wacom tablet.
Well, the thing I find strange with that is, you know, I not only have a heavy hand, I also draw with my nose, right?
Yeah.
And you've got this screen. You can zoom in, idiot. Why do you need to draw with your nose? But I'm still drawing with my nose hunched over this thing.
Do you think it helps you emulate those styles, though, of like Bronze Age guys? Because I feel like if you start using, that's one of the big downsides Scott and I have both talked about. One of the reasons we tend to prefer traditional inking is that when you have digital, it's like the eternal zoom can be a real bane to inking, because if you zoom in too far and you get too much detail, it actually takes away from like the minimalism you would come up with, like having to do the nose thing. So I almost wonder, Tim, if like, do you think that's maybe you're continuing to do that because you're mimicking these styles that did that, you know? I don't know.
Well, I heard, yeah. I mean, what's this? John Romita Sr. He was talking. There was that interview where he was Stan Lee, and he's drawn. They're doing some live drawing real quick after the interview, and you know, and Romita the Senior goes to sit down like that. And he goes, "What are you gonna do, Dad? Draw with your nose like you normally do?" It was funny, like, "Hey, I draw with my nose," but I mean, to get those lines right,
yeah.
And so what I learned also to get the feathering and get all that lines is I have one direction. That.
Yeah.
I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I've got this line, right? So what I do is I spin that puppy around every time. So I'm always doing this line.
Smart. Line. So you spin it just like you would a page.
Yeah. And just like, because if I go to backwards on myself, it just looks like crap. Right.
Yeah.
So I've got and I, use my elbow and do that every single time. I'm still trying to master it. But it's a lot easier. The other thing that's tricky you do is with Sketchbook Pro, you've got the assist.
Yeah.
I swear by the assist. If you want to do those perfect feather lines or that perfect, like I got to draw from her hip down to her knee, down to her ankle, right, with one long line. Or let's say I got a big piece of machinery that I got to draw that whole line with one long strip, right?
Yeah.
I can't do that. I cannot do that. Traditionally, it's impossible. Unless I had a French curve and I found the exact curve, blah, blah, blah. But with this, it's just like use that assist tool. You start where you're going to start, and then you start dragging it, and it's just a perfectly smooth line the entire way.
Okay, see, now I need to mess with that program. I love that. I also love GRYZ34 said, I think traditional is quicker too.
Oh, I didn't know it did.
Yeah.
I've talked about, and I am kind of coming around to doing more digital inking in Clip Studio, but my the reason why I put that off for so long was because I saw so many people that would draw that line and then it wouldn't write and then they draw it again. Where if you're doing it traditionally, you put that line down and it's
one shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
the endless undo and the endless zoom are like the two banes of that. Yeah.
It does. I try to limit that. I am pretty judicious with it. I'm not really overly reliant on it. Usually I get to a problem area where it's like, I've been perfect this whole piece, right? Then this part here is just, I'm losing my mind on this part, right? I'm undo. Once I get past that hurdle, I go back to, I can get the rest of the drawing done in 10 minutes, But I spend a half an hour fighting with that one little small spot, and then I can usually bowl through it. But I see, and I try. My friend, he's on the chat there. He was saying a couple of things about the aliasing, but what was I going to say? I totally lost train of thought.
Just real quick, while you're thinking, is it Duracar Arts? Hopefully, I'm getting that right. This is what a French curve is.
Yeah.
It's not a technique. It's just something you can use to draw different curves and things like that. So.
Yeah, and usually like a good trick, like I have it at my art desk. Like most people who are traditionally inking have it, but it's just like put a nail in the wall and just hang all your French curves and your circle templates. And like templates are like the dirty trick of inking clean lines.
Oh,
There's guys though, like our like Scott and I's friend Kevin Cross, who like he's one of the few guys I know who like he'd have like a number 1 series 7 and he'd do like the edge of a character and just start from the top and just do the full line, and it was like perfectly weighted. I envy the shit out of that. Like I have no idea.
He doesn't drink coffee.
Do a long distance line that's curvy and just freehand it with a brush.
Yeah. There's a piece of Kevin's right there.
Yeah.
It's an art. I mean, I can do it. I can do it now traditionally, especially with like that brush pen.
Yeah.
If I'm working big, like most of my drawings on the walls here, those are 18 by 24.
Yes, you're my kind of guy. All right.
And I love all that room, right? I'm gonna draw big. I'm gonna draw the character big on there, right? If I got enough room, I can get those lines down perfectly. You put me on like an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, or even a 11 by 17 comic board, and you have to go down to a 6-inch panel. I can't do that. I can't do that like that. But if I've got plenty of room and I'm drawing big, and when you draw big, you get kind of like boisterous about it, you just kind of like, I've got so much room and everything is going to be
Scott. Are you convinced? Are you going to draw big now?
No. I mean, I don't draw actual size or whatever, but I've heard the opposite. Ed Piskor on the Cartoonist Kayfabe, he was talking about how he'd switched over to drawing like actual size and how much that like sped up his process and everything. So, I mean, I don't know if I would go that far, but I mean, I typically, when I'm working traditional, I do work larger, but not that large.
Come on.
Use just a regular, 11 by 17 to your pages.
Okay? Yeah, I work 11 by 17 when I do traditional. Yeah.
I do like big, giant, like 18 by 24 pages that Scott always teases me about. But that's part of why is like I actually do think it has more to do with the artist themselves. Because it really just depends on what you're comfortable with and what gets the best result, So it's like if you're a person who like feels restricted in a tiny area drawing, then why not draw on like a giant sheet of paper?
Well, look at all Kirby's stuff. I mean, his old, you see it sitting at that desk, and he's got that piece of paper that's the size of his desk, and he's drawn all that Kirby detail all over the place, and then. Or you look at the old, before they used 11 by 17, I think they were twice up size.
Yep.
These pages are huge.
I know. And part of what made me switch was, so I was originally doing, I did a whole graphic novel, like it was maybe like a third larger than scale. So it wasn't that much larger. And I kept envying the look of these comics. of a lot of cartoonists that were in this art show that was at the Hammer, and I think it traveled around the country, called the Masters of American Comics. And it exhibited a bunch of like the golden age artists, like, and like all the way to like Schutz, and then like Chris Ware pages, and you had Art Spiegelman pages, and like all these guys across the whole genre of comics, you know. But it's like Seeger, like all the classic cartoonists were working on these gigantic pages. You look at like Winsor McKay's pages, and they were huge. Like, they were not tiny little pages. And the one exception was Art Spiegelman, who almost worked at scale. You know,
but weren't the Winsor McKay, wasn't, I mean, I know, I mean, they were huge, the original files, but it was printed pretty large too. Wasn't his stuff printed almost the size of the newspaper?
He was pretty much printed at close to the size he was working at, because that was just like these giant newspaper pages. But what was cool was like just seeing all these different artists, including like R. Crumb, who has all that beautiful detail, and they all were gigantic.
He worked big too, didn't he? Crumb did. Crumb, his comic pages were the big pages.
Huge. Yeah. So like most of these guys that are like iconic guys in comics that I liked, like a lot of the guys I was looking at, Daniel Klaus, another guy where I was just like, he works a little smaller than like Ware, but I was just looking at those guys and I was like, oh, that's how they're getting that look. Like, I mean, it's not all of it, but I was like, I should probably work bigger. So that convinced me. But Scott's totally dead on in the sense of like, it might be one of those like ridiculous time wasting, like it might actually be a detriment. And I do think it has to do more with style, because like I can't imagine like looking at like Mouse by Spiegelman and going and like if that had been done bigger and reduced, I don't know if it would have had like the same kind of look that it has, and it might actually hurt the comic if it was done differently. So I do think it's like one of those preference things. But I do want to convince Scott to work huge, because your stuff looks so good. Your stuff would look like 20,000 times.
Well, I mean, I would work larger, but not. I don't know about the comic, just because it's just for expediency's sake. But reproduce. I mean, yeah, and I've got. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I have a 11x17 scanner, but if I had worked any larger than that, I'd still have to splice stuff. Although I heard Photoshop has the new Photoshop has something where it splices everything like if you got some kind of AI that figures it out for you and puts it all together. If you got a really digital camera, you can get a scan off it with a digital camera.
Yeah, I mean, what I do is I do mine in fourths. So I scan 4. Like I have a 13x19 scanner, and then I scan it in like fourths. So it does increase your time. And then I have to manually do it, because all the automated tricks to doing that work really great if you're making like an Instagram photo.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to make print ready black and white art, like they still haven't really figured out a good way to like seamlessly like stitch different scans together.
Oh yeah.
Good. That would be amazing if anybody finds one. But yeah, that new, I remember seeing that at like Adobe Max a few years ago and being like, that's going to save me time. That's so cool. And then using it and being like, yeah, this is kind of like the auto mask, where it's kind of cool if I shot everything perfectly on a blue screen. But the second there's like, yeah, anyhow. So we totally have bypassed the topic.
What I'm doing right now is I'm changing the thumbnail, because I think we should just go with what we're talking about. Okay. And maybe we'll have Tim on. We'll have Tim back on another time, and we can go more into the censorship thing. Because
at the end, I'll tell that story about the censorship issue that I get. But I mean, it's whatever you guys want to do.
Well, Tim, I love this conversation, and I think part of why this might have gone so long on this is like Scott and I used to talk a ton about tools and tips and tricks. It's been a while since we've really talked shop about tools, and so I think just having a taste of it is like it's such a fun thing to talk about in our niche little field. Like,
I get so many questions by people, technical questions, right? Yeah. and I give them like a dissertation every time I do a reply, right? And I feel like I lose them sometimes. I got a couple of buddies that like, if you ever talk about inking one more time, I'm gonna throw you through the window because you get so insane about it. I don't care. It's just ink. Just ink the thing, right? So, but I'll go into super long detail about that.
And you should get kind of like, part of why people like us get passionate about it and stuff is like, and tell me, Tim, if your experience is different, but like when I started trying to ink comics the way that I admired, and I was trying to mimic that with like a Sharpie, right? Because I think I started with a Sharpie, and I think I had a couple people who knew better who were like, hey, if you want to get that look, like, use these tools. And instead I used a Sharpie. And then gradually, like, you do 20 pages with a Sharpie and you're like, this just does not look right. And it keeps drying out. It's kind of crappy. And then you gradually start ending up kind of where the guys like Tim and Scott and myself are telling you to go when it comes to inking. Because what's weird is a lot of the stuff that works and kind of continues to work. So a lot of people, like, with tools can kind of end up misdirecting. And I almost think you almost have to, right? You almost have to have that moment of like, what does that guy know? And then like you start learning like, oh, it's really hard to like feathering. Try feathering with a Sharpie, dude.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I mean, you can kind of do it, but
with
you're not gonna do that
with a chisel tip Sharpie, you can do it.
Yeah.
If you're working on an 18 by 24, you can do that really nice with the chisel tip.
Yeah. Take you 10 times as long. But I mean, that's true. Like on a giant board, like, but yeah, I think that's cool. Like that. I think that's why, I don't know. Did you have moments like that? Like where when you started, you tried tools that you thought like, oh, I'll use this thing that nobody else uses, and then be like, oh, that's why no one else uses it.
Well, when I very first started drawing, just in general, right? I don't know if you guys remember this. Scott might remember this. The flare tip. Bic had a flare pen.
Oh, I think my girlfriend, I just saw her had a green one down there.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it forever.
Your teachers used to use them to mark your papers up with, that flare. Yeah. I got those because Perry Drugstore, they're like 69 cents, right? And you just go grab a handful of them, and I'd come home and I didn't understand that, you could use a Sharpie or a black marker to fill in those blacks. No, let's use that tiny little pen and sit there for 9 hours drawing this way, that way, this way, that way, to fill in that whole spot of black Spider-Man.
Oh no.
Little pen. But yeah, that flare is what I started with. And then I didn't even realize that, I'd use colored pencil, or I'd use like a Crayola marker. Not even Crayolas was expensive. I'm talking using like Kmart markers.
Yeah.
With basically a marker set to me as a kid, if it was good, it had a good skin tone.
Yeah.
If it didn't have a good skin tone, it sucked. That's the worst marker set. But Kmart had this like 35 or 48 color marker set that had the best skin tone, crap marker. The whole set was like $1.99, right? But you get that, it's like, that's a great one. And so I keep buying that same marker set. But then I'd go take that yellow right over that black water-based pen. I go, oh, I just screwed this up. So when I first started drawing, I would take a pencil and I'd pencil, say, Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
And then I would color him. And then I would ink him over the top of the colors. So I'd have to learn how to, I'd have to do all that webbing on his clothing over red already that's there. That's streaky red. It's not like it's a flat opaque red. It's streaky red because that marker sucked, right?
Yeah.
I would do it that way. So then when I draw, then it's like I would draw, I'd pencil really quick the figure, right? And then I'd color it, and then I would ink it, because you couldn't color it over that crappy ink when I first discovered a permanent black pen that doesn't speak, I was like, oh my God, I just entered the next level of nirvana. I've never seen that before. My whole life has changed. What do you mean I could ink it first, then color? That's crazy talk.
Yeah, no, I totally relate to that, because I remember there was like this fine balance with those crappy colored pencils too, where you had to be really light with your touch because they're wax. I mean, especially the really bad ones, like they get really waxy if you pressed a little too hard. And then like when you're trying to get ink to lay over that, you're trying to get like water to lay over over wax and just like, oh, yeah, I 100% relate to that. What's funny is one of my favorite sketch tools from when I was I think a little older is like these precise V-ball, and I still use these to this day for sketching because it's just such a great little like when I first discovered this, I think I was like 10.
That's the same
and
thing.
I was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
a great sketching pen.
Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah. Don't take them on a plane though. I made that mistake. Take this on a plane, and whatever it's in, it's gonna be just like splatted all over. Like,
oh no.
Oh, really? I do notice that sometimes you open them once and you're like, they'll leak a little bit on you. But yeah, my son actually for Christmas, he bought me a whole pack of these. He must have got them somewhere. He thought, oh, black pen. Dad likes to draw, right? He bought me these pens. But it's funny because when he got them, I go, I really loved these when I was a kid.
Yeah.
How'd you know that I really liked these when I was a kid? These wings were great.
These were like the special pen, right? You know, because you're like, dude, this is like high class.
Well, my seventh grade art teacher, Mr. Spitzer, right? If he wasn't drunk, he would say, he talked like this. He talked like this, right? And he'd go, you guys, what are you using these pens for? These pens have to have a roller ball in it. You see that little ball that spins in there, it dips in the ink every time. You're like, what are you talking? Oh yeah, you're right. That's what it does. So then for that on out, it's like I'd open up because like Green's Art Supply downtown Rochester, they had all the pens you could, scribble on the paper there to test them out. I'd look at every single pen. Nope, doesn't have the roller ball. Nope, doesn't have a roller ball. Nope. Oh, there's a roller ball right there. Because it just, for some reason, I just thought like, oh, it just, the ink comes out so nice. You want to get sketchy with it. It looks really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, for a cheap pen, these things, you get a pack of these for about $5. You get like 12 of them.
Yeah, I love them for sketching because like when I sketch with pencil, I get too like fragile and like precious, and then I like if I'm trying to like sketch a landscape really quick, or like I'm on a trip, or like I don't know, like trying to sketch people on a bus or something, like if I'm doing pencil, I get all fragile, and instead of thinking of the hole and blocking that in, I'll just be like, I'm going to draw that guy's ear. And then it's like I have this great drawing of an ear that's totally out of proportion with everything else because I didn't work out the full before getting into the detail. Whereas when I sketch with a pen, it's just like I have to commit to that line and just adjust it, and I don't get to erase it. And like I find that like my observational sketching just gets like 20,000 times better when I commit to just being like, I'm putting this in pen, because then I really get into the line and just kind of like go with it, as opposed to get all like tight and like sketchy and loose, like too loose. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say the technique that I learned early on, and I've used it for the most part drawing, especially when I'm a sketch quick, is I hold the pencil like this.
Yeah.
And I do that. Right.
I've never been able to draw like that.
It's like everyone's feathery lines too from there. If you're doing like using the side of the lead, and you're like, right there's a whole arm, or right there's a whole this.
Yeah.
And especially if you want to draw like landscapes and stuff, you can sit there and go up and down, make the trees in the background.
Yeah.
I used to do that with like when life drawing, where you have like the Conti crayons. That's fine, but like as far as like comics and detail stuff, I just always just hold
it. So I mean, you can always,
Yeah.
One of the limitations I like that's very similar to that is like when I'm sketching, like because I do a lot of my sketching digitally, like on roughs, thumbnails and stuff. And one limitation I've been giving myself since starting to do that has been just use the generic pencil brush on Photoshop.
No, yeah.
And it's great. It's just like that. It's like super limited and kind of gross looking, and it kind of gives you these severe limitations when you're working with it because it doesn't have like I don't let myself switch brushes.
So this is one thing I've discovered, maybe not super early, but I mean I discovered this a few years ago, and right now with the stuff I'm doing with the Marvel stuff, I love the pencils. I'll pencil it, I'll ink it, try and desperately, slavishly hard to get that perfect feathering and everything like that. Then I'll color it and get that nice Marvel 68 color Doc Martin color down perfect, right? And I go, I like the pencil drawing the best. That's why I include it on Patreon. I give them everything. That pencil drawing, with like you said, that I use that cheap pencil, that one pencil tool. I use it on Sketchbook Pro. It's the same thing, right? It only goes to, I think, a 14. It doesn't go any higher than that. And I use it, and it's like you see the drawing. It's like that drawing looks so great, just the pencils, because you see all the little think lines and you see all that stuff and all the kind of the stuff that goes into it. You lose all that when you go to ink it because it's too tight.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, one of the things I envy really solid watercolorists is that, like, because like one of the only mediums that like uses color and kind of goes from like a rough to a completion that kind of can retain some of that rough pencil work is like, watercolor. So my wife like works in watercolor painting for like children's books and stuff, and she can retain a lot of that original sketch line like on her finals, where it's like, I totally agree. It's like there's moments where you see that you do this kind of beautiful gestural, and then like the further you get on the art, like the more it kind of kills that movement. And that it's one of the beautiful things about like looking at like the line tests of like original Disney films, where it's like you can see the pencil just direct, and it's so like expressive. And anyhow, that's beautiful.
I like that. I switched over to using like color pencils, like I mean, I if I'm doing my comic, I don't want the lines, but when I do sketches, I want that pencil to show through. So I'll do like use the Kohl erase pencils and stuff. I don't even bother to erase because I like the way it looks.
I love it.
I was looking at I was reading Captain Marvel, the original not the girl, but the male Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Reading his comic, the masterwork.
Wait, you mean Shazam? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Like the masterwork comic, like I read the comic, right, and it's like, okay, it looks great. It's Gene Colan art, right? And I'm like looking at it, I'm like, okay. And then the very back of the book, they do this in a lot of the masterworks. They'll have like the entire comic of like one of the issues, just the pencils. They got the pencils before it was even inked, and you're like, oh my god, this art that I thought sucked is amazing in the pencils. You look at them art, it's Vince Colletta, because Vince Colletta can't ink his way out of a plastic bag, and you're like, oh my god, it's like this inker destroyed this perfect. That's what the finished product looked like from these pencils. These pencils are like so perfect. It's like Wally Wood, Al Williamson perfect. It's like, oh my gosh. And then you threw this crap ink on it, and it's just like, oh my god, you just destroyed this. Look at the faces, they're destroyed. So I mean, I love looking at the pencils. I mean, Kirby, same thing. You look at his pencils, and then you look at the inks. The inks are great, right? But you look at those original pencils, and you're like I remember I saw a picture of Kirby drawing a Fantastic Four, and here's Galactus on the page, and I go, what page is that? That looks so amazing, that pencil drawing he's got there. It's like, oh, that's that page in Fantastic Four, blah, 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 right? You look at you go, that's not the same page, because that drawing is amazing. This finished drawing in the book just kind of looks You're like, what's just the pencils? Like, his pencils are so perfect. He'd pencil so tight and so clean that the inker would pretty much just copies exactly line for line what he's already got. They don't need to embellish that much at all. And when you see artists that are just perfect, it's just like the composition's perfect. They got the background perfect. It's all in the pencils, and you just like, I'd rather look at that than look at the ink version or the colored version.
Yeah, I'm mixed because, man, I love a good inked page though, because it's like like there's something about ink when it's done right. It just looks so good.
Well, I've noticed if like a lot of those guys back in the days, if you ever noticed, like Don Heck, right? Don Heck's doing the pencils, and say like, I don't know, but Jim Mooney's doing the inks, right? Well, Jim Mooney's also a penciler, right? And then they'll switch. Like 2-3 issues down the line, they'll switch. Now Mooney's doing the penciling, and Don Heck's doing the inking, right? I don't know if it's like maybe one guy didn't have time, he's going on vacation, maybe he was sick, but they switched jobs, and they look very similar to each other. But the reason those inks were so good is because he's an artist, right? He's not just an inker. So that's when you see like Al Williamson ink, it's like, well, if you look at all his Flash Gordon stuff that he penciled and ink looks perfect. Yeah. And then you look like an old Avengers, a Don Heck pencil, and then Al Williamson inked it. They're like, oh, it looks amazing. And then you get like Vince Colletta, who just inks, and he's terrible. And you look at his stuff, and you're like, he just destroyed that. It's It's like I would, I heard stories where John Buscema was going to throw Vince Colette out the window. One of their pages.
It is intimidating to think of that era where you're just kind of passing over your labored pencils,
Yeah. And it's probably before vellum, so once it's gone, it's gone. Once it's erased, there's no more pencils left in there. Yeah.
Oh man. Whew.
No.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't know if you guys wanted to wrap it up. I know it's getting late where Tim is, and I think we've been going about the typical length of time. We totally kind of switched our focus, but that's cool. We've done that before where we had a topic and then we just went off on a tangent. Like I think we like this topic a little better, so I just went ahead and I changed the thumbnail, so we'll just change it. So, nice. But if anyone's been watching and you made it through this long and you were expecting a different content, we'll probably try to have Tim back and we'll talk about that too, because that is something I do want to talk about. But I'm always up for talking about tools and process and stuff. So.
Oh man, that was fun. Yeah, I was definitely a change of direction in topic, but I enjoyed it, and I'd actually enjoy having the not safe for work conversation at another time too, because I think that's important too. So.
Yeah,
cool.
It's funny that you talk. I always say this. You talk a bunch. I talk as much as we are in depth about drawing, right? And the artistry and stuff like that, and how technical we are and how laborious we are about that, right? And then you look at my content, right? And you're like, it reminds me of Spinal Tap when he's he's playing the piano, right? He's like, oh, it's a beautiful piece. He's like, it's an E minor, the saddest of these, makes people weep instantly. Well, what do you call it? This place is called Lick My Love Pump.
Oh, Spinal Tap. Man, I got to rewatch that. It's been so long. That's I love all that Christopher Guest stuff. It's great.
Oh man, you know what? It is overdue because I don't think I've watched that in a couple of years, and it's pretty cool.
Oh, it's so good. So good.
Oh man. I still, because of that movie, want to do a song with 3 basses.
It's funny if you listen to a lot of older singers, older groups and stuff now, is they constantly keep saying, the older we get, the more Spinal Tap just becomes so true. You know what I mean? They're like, you're looking back at like our life has turned into Spinal Tap. Alice Cooper said it. He's like, the older I get, the more my life becomes Spinal Tap. Because they just nailed it. That movie, they just nailed everything that's about that whole world back then, and they did it so perfectly.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't even realize, like, at the time, like, that just wasn't, like, they kind of were one of the first. I think maybe there was a offshoot of Monty Python that did a fake band mockumentary called The Ruddles.
Yeah.
I think predates Spinal Tap. But it's like, I think there's like 1 or 2 things around the time that did that the mockumentary.
Yep.
But that was definitely one of them, like where it's like that wasn't really a common thing, like like nowadays. I think most people would look at it and be like, "Oh, it's like The Office or something," like they wouldn't realize like that was a really unique and kind of brilliant move to just make it feel like a documentary.
When they came back, I saw the movie, when I was in high school, I think, and it was like what 80, 81 came out. I was in high school in the late 80s. And I saw it for the first time. I was just instantly in love with that movie. But in the mid 90s, they came back. And they
had a new album, Back from the Dead, I think.
And they had a live concert. That's probably the best live concerts I've ever seen. It's like those guys are really good.
Were they like dressed up as Spinal Tap and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, because I went to I saw it was it was Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer, but they did Spinal Tap. They weren't dressed up. They did Spinal Tap, but they also did Mighty Wind and some other stuff. And they did it all. It was so cool. It was like one of the greatest, best concerts. It was great.
Yeah, those dudes are pretty talented musicians too. Yeah. It's kind of insane.
Yeah. Well, what was it? Lenny and the Squiggy and the Swigtones? Lenny was the guitarist and Squiggy and the Swigtones.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great stuff. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and wrap it up then. And so yeah, I guess I usually close it out. So we'll start with Josh first, then we'll go to Tim, and then I'll close it out.
All right. So I will plug this again. So if you guys like indie comics, especially we talked a crap load about inking, and this is all traditionally inked and black and white, which is my choice. Like I actually wanted black and white. It's a rare thing to be able to work with black and white. So anyhow, this comic, 2 stories, is available on Amazon.com, and you can just make sure you get my last name right, because if you just look for 2 stories, you're going to end up with a million things. But if you get that KEMBLE and search for that, you can pre-order a graphic novel that deals with, it's for mature readers, and it deals with heavy topics of faith and mental illness, and it's available for pre-order now. So go there and pre-order it, or you can also find links to it on my site. So
wait, is it pre-order or is it just where they remind you? Because
no, it's on pre-order now. Yeah.
Okay, because they didn't send me a reminder. I set up for a reminder and they didn't send me one. So
I
I'll have to go on and
clicked on the same thing where I was like, send me a reminder, and they didn't. And then I just, because I'm, obviously excited about the release, I've been checking anyway. And it was like yesterday where I was like, oh, the pre-order's up.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and pre-order that then. If the reminder doesn't work. So. All right, Tim. What about you? I guess your Patreon out there. That's one place to go.
Yeah. So if you want to just look at the art, and just look, it's a lot of it's censored. If you want to look at the art, go to Deviant, go through my gallery. Everything that I do, I post things first on Deviant, and within maybe a week they end up on Patreon. So I use Deviant as kind of like a preview, so I can preview the stuff as I'm doing it. And I'm pretty, I'm going to post a new set for a Savage She-Hulk series. I'm going to post the promo tomorrow, so you'll see that. And then it'll end up probably, I'm going to take a break for Thanksgiving, but it'll probably come on after that. So that's the best place to go check out the stuff first. And then if you like it and you want to see it and you want more of it, and so you want the pencils, you want all the other different layers to check it out, then sign up for Patreon. You can sign up for $1 and get the back catalog, which is now I think the back catalog's opened up to June, I think. So you're getting some pretty recent stuff in the back catalog for $1. $5 gets you let's just say it's the softcore tier, and then $10 gets you the hardcore stuff. But if you get $10, you get it all anyways. So you get more bang for the buck for the $10.
No pun intended.
Yep. And like I said, and I'm on Newgrounds. I'm trying out Newgrounds to see what it is. Newgrounds, you can put stuff on you can put stuff not censored, and you can be as graphic as you want. A lot of my stuff I still keep censored because I don't want to give it away for the people that are getting it on Patreon. But you can do anything on Newgrounds, and I'm starting to. It's not moving as fast as I want to do it, but I need a second spot because. Again, I was going to tell you the story when you get if you get kicked off of, say, Deviant, or you get suspended from Deviant for like a week, you're screwed. You're dead in the water until that's taken up. So you need a spot. If you want to still keep current stuff out, you need a place like Newgrounds to go. It's like, hey, come over to Newgrounds until I get freed up on Deviant, then I can go back to Deviant. So if you're doing that safer work, it's good to have a backup place like that. I mean, it's great if you have your own website, that's fine. But if you want to stay on a social media site, something like Newgrounds, it's a freer place. It's a lot more, conducive for not safe for work stuff. Deviant used to be great, but it's getting a little draconian now. So it's always good to have a second spot. So yeah, I'm on Newgrounds, Deviant, and Patreon.
Yeah, and when we definitely do want to have Tim back and talk about that, because that was one of the topics I wanted to talk about was when you're on these platforms and you're whatever kind of content you're doing, if they decide they want to change what they're doing, like I think Tumblr did that, some other things, you always have to have some sort of backup or some other way to go. And even with stuff that I'm doing, I'm not necessarily doing what Tim's doing, but I'm doing some stuff that has cursing and just like drinking and a bunch of stuff that isn't for kids. And there's, Amazon tends to change their rules.
Oh
and
no,
stuff.
I'm screwed because both of what you just mentioned are in here. So.
No, not your own self-published stuff. That's not a problem. But when you're doing it on like merch or
got it.
So far, KDP's okay, but there's also the thing where like on KDP, I've got books that that have curse words on the cover, and you can't advertise those. And sometimes it's hard to get your stuff seen unless you can advertise it. So there's just different things like that. But I definitely want to have Tim back on. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff because there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing that kind of I'm finding, that
you're hitting the wall that
certain things that I got. So anyway,
for quite a while. That's awesome. That would be man. We gotta have you back on because I'd love to have that topic too.
Yeah, we'll talk about the censorship stuff on another episode. So and me is you can find my stuff at circworks.com. I probably have some kind of Black Friday stuff coming up or whatever. I'm sure I'll have some sales on that. And also you can find me on YouTube. You're on my channel right now, and check out the Making Comics 101. If you're into this process stuff that we've been talking about this whole time, I mean, I cover all of that stuff. I mean, I cover pretty much everything you could think of as far as comics if you want to check that out. So, check that out. I apologize for my dog barking in the background there. The other thing that I want to mention is the show we do usually every week, but it does sort of bounce back and forth from my channel to Josh's channel, and it can be on a different day. And it can get a little confusing. So if you don't want to be confused, if you want to know exactly where we're going to be broadcasting and everything, we have a mailing list, and we don't spam you or anything like that. But usually about 30 minutes before we go live, I send out a newsletter and let you know where, you can click on that link and you can find where we're going to be, what channel and all that stuff. And that might be a good thing to be on because next week, I don't know, I got to talk to Josh about this, but like Tim said, he's taking a break for Thanksgiving. I've definitely got something going on Thanksgiving and got something going on the day before. So whether we do a show or not next week, I don't know. And then after that, the week after that's my girlfriend's birthday on a Thursday. So, there may be some time changes. I got to talk to Josh about all that stuff.
I think navigating the holidays, I'm glad you brought that up because we will have to talk about it. But the great thing about being on that mailing list is it keeps you in the know.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely check that out. There's a link in the description for that. And I just want to thank everyone in the chat. Thanks. We had a lively chat. It looks like Tim brought some people over. So, we do this, like I said, we do this show every week. So if you like this kind of content and you're new, definitely check it out. Again, thanks, Tim, for coming on. This is it wasn't what I expected, but it was great to talk about this stuff because I geek out about this stuff all the time. So, so everyone else, we'll see you probably not next week. It's possible if we do it on Friday or something, but we'll let you know through that newsletter. But if not, maybe the following week or whatever. It's going to be. I mean, we're pretty good about putting out episodes. So if we need to take a little vacation every once in a while, I think hopefully you guys won't be too won't get too upset with that. So anyway, we'll see you guys whenever we're back. So later.
Take care.
Bye.